Pride is a strange thing. It builds empires of glass and steel, but it cannot build a fortress around the human soul. A man with all the money in the world can buy anything he can touch, but what happens when he buys something that can touch him back? Something that has been waiting, silently, in the dark for centuries. This is a story about a man who thought he could own the past. He soon learned that the past already owned him, and it had come to collect. Mr. Tio Adebayo was a man who collected impossibilities. A tech mogul who had built his empire from nothing, he saw the world as a series of assets to be acquired. His Lagos penthouse was a museum of his victories, a cold, minimalist gallery of steel and glass overlooking a city he felt he owned. But for all his wealth, he had recently acquired something new: insomnia. A stubborn, gnawing inability to rest that no doctor could cure. He sought a new prize to distract himself, and he found it in the catalogue of a private auction. Lot 333, The Eye of the Silent King. It was a ceremonial mask from a forgotten kingdom in the deep forests of the Edo region. It was carved from a single piece of ancient ebony, its face a haunting mixture of serene authority and silent sorrow. Its eyes were two empty holes, but cowrie shells were arranged around them like tears. The description was sparse, noting only that it was used in enthronement and judgment rituals. At the auction, the mask sat alone on a pedestal, seeming to absorb the light around it. The air grew still when the bidding began. The auctioneer, a nervous man named Dr. Adebayo, spoke of its rarity with a tremor in his voice. "A truly potent piece," Adebayo had said. Adebayo, bidding via a discreet tablet from his front row seat, outmatched every rival without blinking. When the final gavel fell, Adebayo approached him. "Congratulations, Mr. Adebayo," the old man said, his eyes not on Adebayo, but fixed on the mask. "A word of advice, if I may. The men who wore this mask, they did not sleep while it was in their possession. It was a symbol that the king, like the guardian spirit, was ever watchful." Adebayo gave a thin, dismissive smile. "A charming piece of folklore, doctor. I'm paying for the art, not the superstition. Don't worry, I have no intention of watching over anyone. I just want it on my wall." He paid a king's ransom and had the mask installed that very evening. It was mounted on a stark white wall in his penthouse, directly opposite his bed. It was the last thing he saw before turning off the lights. And the first thing he felt, even with his eyes closed. He felt it watching him. The first night, sleep was a shallow, restless sea. Adebayo tossed and turned, the feeling of being observed a physical weight on his chest. He dismissed it as the novelty of the new object. The second night, the sounds began. Faint whispers that seemed to ride on the silent hum of his state-of-the-art air conditioning. They were too quiet to be words, just the sensation of words, like the rustling of dry leaves. He got up, checked the vents, found nothing. When he returned to bed, he heard a new sound. The distant, impossible rhythm of a single drum. Thump, 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 slow and steady, like a giant heart beating somewhere in the city below. The third night, the mask truly claimed him. He awoke with a gasp, his body paralyzed. He was utterly powerless, able to do nothing but stare into the darkness of his room. His eyes darted to the wall where the mask hung. In the faint moonlight filtering through his floor-to-ceiling windows, a shadow detached itself from the mask. A tall, impossibly thin silhouette of a man, its face hidden by the featureless void of the mask itself. It didn't move towards him. It simply stood in the corner of the room, watching him, a silent, eternal sentinel. He lay there for hours, a prisoner in his own body, until the sun rose and the figure dissolved back into the ebony carving. He stormed into Dr. Aliu's dusty antique shop the next day, his eyes wild with sleepless fury. "What did you sell me?" he demanded. Dr. Aliu didn't look surprised. He simply sighed and poured 2 small glasses of tea. "I did not sell you an object, Mr. Adebayo. I sold you a vessel. And the vessel is not empty. The mask holds the Pomponi, the spirit of the Watcher. It was worn by the king to judge the hearts of his people. But it also judged the king, ensuring he remained humble. It does not sleep. It does not rest. And it will not allow its keeper to rest either until it believes their heart is pure and their debts are paid." "Debts? I have no debts." Adebayo roared. "We all have debts," Aliu whispered, looking into his tea. "The spirit will show you yours." The hauntings escalated. Adebayo started seeing things during the day. For a fleeting moment, the reflection of the Lagos skyline in his glass walls would be replaced by a dense, suffocating jungle. The clean, ozonic smell of his apartment would give way to the scent of damp earth and rotting flowers. He was living in a waking nightmare, his billion-dollar fortress now a prison haunted by his most expensive acquisition. After nearly a week without a single moment of true sleep, he snapped. He would not be ruled by a piece of wood. He would destroy it. One night, fueled by rage and exhaustion, he grabbed a heavy, designer steel hammer from his toolkit. He stood before the mask, its empty eyes seeming to absorb his hatred. "You are mine," he screamed, lifting the hammer high. "I own you." As his arms swung down, the world dissolved. The hammer never struck. The sound was not the crack of wood, but a deafening clap of thunder. The penthouse vanished. He was no longer standing on cold marble, but on the damp, soft earth of a thick jungle clearing. The air was heavy, humid, and alive with the sounds of 1,000 unseen things. Before him sat a great, moss-covered throne, and on it was a figure of impossible scale. A king, 10 feet tall, his body seemingly woven from shadow and root, his presence radiating an ancient and terrifying power. And on his face was the mask. "You own nothing," a voice boomed, not through the air, but inside Adebayo's own skull. The king rose from his throne. He did not attack. He simply raised a hand, and Adebayo's life played out before him, not as a highlight reel of his successes, but as a testament to his pride. He saw the faces of partners he'd betrayed, employees he'd crushed without a thought, the villages his company had displaced to build their server farms. He saw every moment of arrogance, every act of dismissal. He saw the debt the spirit spoke of. It was the debt of his own humanity. "You seek the rest of the body," the voice thundered, "but you have forgotten the work of the soul. This vessel is not a prize. It is a mirror. It demands balance." Adebayo fell to his knees, the hammer dropping from his nerveless fingers. For the first time in his life, the billionaire felt truly, utterly poor. Teo Adebayo's story doesn't end in the jungle. It ends with a choice. He spent a fortune finding the remote village where the mask was first carved. He performed the rituals of humility, offered gifts not as a buyer but as a penitent, and placed the eye of the silent king back on its ancestral shrine. He returned to his penthouse in Lagos. And that night, for the first time in weeks, he slept. A deep, dreamless, perfect sleep. His business continued to thrive, but he was a changed man. He became one of the nation's greatest philanthropists, building schools and hospitals, his name synonymous with a generosity that baffled his corporate rivals. It seemed the curse was broken. But sometimes, when he is working late, alone in his glass tower overlooking the city, he will catch his reflection in the dark window. And just for a second, he will see the faint outline of the ebony mask on his own face. The Watcher never left him. It didn't need to. He had finally paid his debt. The spirit was no longer his jailer. It had simply become his partner, his silent, eternal judge. So I leave you with this question. Do you think the mask was a curse? Or was it a cure for a man who had everything but a soul? Was this a haunting, or was it a rescue? I truly want to know what you believe. Let me know your judgment in the comments below.